Welcome back to Shat on TV, True Detective, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series True Detective. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons. Alongside me is my co-host and True Detective Oracle, the King Bee.
I have no response to that statement.
And this is our Season 3 preview episode where we dive deep into the cast and production of True Detective Season 3 to calibrate our expectations of the new season. As a caveat, the King Bee has seen the first 2 episodes in theater thanks to an HBO special event at Alamo Drafthouse, but we promise no spoilers. At most, you'll get our hopes and expectations for Season 3.
Yeah, I'm real excited. There's finally going to be something on TV for change. It's been a serious drought, and if I spend too much more time in the horseback riding simulator, I'm afraid I'm never coming back.
I downloaded the Xbox app onto my iPhone, and so I can see who's on Xbox and what they're doing at any given time.
Oh, no.
I've been timestamping the King Bee, and I think there was an 18-hour day the other day. I'm pretty sure. Now, I built in the possibility that it might just be on the screen, and you might be completely dozed off on the couch or something like that.
Well, I mean, as much as I'd like to catch some sleep, I am monitoring the map to see where my enemies are, tracking their locations, looking for hot spots. Maybe there's a new fresh hunting spot that no one's aware of. There's a lot of information you've got to track in order to survive in the West. So, no, I assure you I was there and I was putting in a good long day, and I've been making quite a bit of progress.
Back to True Detective. Last week, we released True Detective Seasons 1 and 2 recap. You can download it now at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, and wherever fine podcasts are found. January 13th will be a 2-hour HBO premiere of True Detective Season 3, and that's what we're gearing up for right now. So what you can expect from the podcast is tweets immediately after every episode. So Sunday nights, starting January 13th, we'll be tweeting immediately after, just kind of immediate thoughts and interacting with the audience. You can catch us at Shat on TV on Twitter. And then we'll give everyone Sunday night and Monday to write in to us. So you can email us at hosts@shatontv.com or hit us up on Twitter. And we'll use that for a mailbag section that we call The Watch. So on Monday nights, we'll record the podcast, and it'll be out on Tuesdays. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't and never miss an episode. In case you were wondering, True Detective is scheduled to run for 10 weeks. So we'll cover all 10 weeks, and then we'll follow up with a Season 3 special at the end. And if you're a fan of our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, don't worry. This TV season, we're doing it a little bit differently. Normally, we take a break off of movies to do a TV show like Game of Thrones or Westworld. This time, we are actually going to do both Shat on TV and Shat the Movies at the same time. We have a big enough cast to do that. So most of the time, you hear Carrie Gross and Roger Roper on the movies. King B, Big D, and I will be doing Shat on TV with True Detective. And as True Detective wraps up, we'll be transitioning into American Gods. And then from American Gods, we'll be transitioning into Game of Thrones. So we'll be going full speed with TV all the way until, I think, May or June, with Game of Thrones being only a 6-episode run.
You're going to be sick of fucking watching TV. I'll watch more TV than any human alive because I'm content to just trash talk whatever I'm looking at. You're a man with a schedule who actually likes to do things. Gene absolutely hates wasting time, so he's going to have a really rough couple of months ahead of him.
I mean, I'm excited about Game of Thrones. American Gods, I'm kind of on the fence right now just to see what's going on with the new showrunners. But True Detective Season 3, I am genuinely excited about. This wasn't even on our radar in 2018, but I'm excited about doing it now. It just looks so good. And I think a big part of it, some people said it's kind of a season 1 rehash, that they're going to bring about a lot of the same ideas and a lot of the same themes. But this cast is really stellar. And I think people who have seen the first 2 episodes in that HBO preview have been raving about, just the quality of talent that they brought in this year.
We have this culture where everyone's really quick to naysay something. Everybody wants to be the first to find the fault in the great thing that everyone's enjoying. I'm probably the worst. I do see issues with this season on the horizon, or if there are things that I'm worried and concerned about, but I don't believe it's the same thing that everyone else is griping about. A return to the themes of season 1, that's not a problem. That's just a production company trying to find their magic stride again.
I think it's just the idea that if they went so wrong with season 2 that they're trying to just cover their asses by saying, okay, let's not take any chances and do exactly what we did in season 1. I don't think that's really the case, but we'll see this season. But the big star, as everyone knows about this season, is Mahershala Ali, who plays the lead role of Wayne Hayes. So he's an Arkansas policeman that served 2 terms in Vietnam. He did long-range recon, so kind of Rambo-type stuff. And now he tracks wild boar for fun. his favorite comic book heroes are Batman and the Silver Surfer. So just these moody loners that kind of set the tone for the character Wayne Hayes. And, he's got these classic kind of quirky things like Rust Cohle, the Matthew McConaughey character from season 1, even going so far as to hunt by, moonlight and just be really this dark, moody character.
I don't think that that's a really strong parallel. I think people are really reaching there. These are two distinctly different, moody protagonists. Mahershala Ali definitely got dark loner in him. I mean, there's this sort of quiet intensity to him that McConaughey didn't really have, because prompted Rust Cohle, he'd tell you what he thought. And I don't think Mahershala Ali's character is like that at all. He's keeping things a lot closer to the chest, and he's going to let his actions speak rather than his words.
Yeah, some of the things to watch with him this season. First of all, if you're not familiar with the actor, he's best known for his role in Moonlight, and also he was in Luke Cage. He played Cottonmouth in Luke Cage. And I haven't seen Moonlight, but I'm not a huge Luke Cage fan, but I thought he did a fairly good job for a Netflix comic book series.
He's going to be in Battle Angel Alita, I believe.
I'm going to go with it because I like the idea of it. But again, this character, you kind of mentioned that he's got this moody loner thing that sets him apart from Rust Cohle, but also to see how time affects his character, because as we know, this story will go over a decade, and so you see his character age and hopefully, kind of like we saw with the Walter White character in Breaking Bad, I think TV has now matured to a level that if time passes, that character had better change, or people are going to call you on it.
He definitely wears a lot more sweaters later on in his life. As for drastic change in his character, I don't know that you're going to really see that, but I feel that you're definitely going to understand that this guy carries a lot of his experiences with him.
I love that just came from the King Bee, a man who owns more cardigans than any human being I know. Moving to the second part of this parallel that people are calling through season 1 to season 3, we've got the sidekick, right? The buddy cop. Stephen Dorff plays Roland West. So in season 1, you had Woody Harrelson's character Marty, who's kind of a skirt chaser. We get that again. A lot of critics have said that Stephen Dorff's performance is surprisingly good after seeing some of the atrocities that we saw in season 2, like Vince Vaughn.
For the first half of it, I wasn't really sure who I was looking at. I wasn't familiar with the actor. I swear to God, I thought I was looking at a CGI Dennis Quaid in a bad wig. He does have kind of a rough haircut throughout this first couple episodes. That's probably not going to change. But beyond that, he's simply just another guy who is paired with his partner, and they're just doing a job. He doesn't have any weird character traits. He wears a Texas belt buckle, I think. I didn't see anybody like overacting or trying to steal the scene with weirdness. This is, I think, a lot more based in real true to life character.
You're not alone in that Dennis Quaid comparison. Actually, I read a lot of reviews of season 3 before we recorded this podcast, and a lot of people kind of brought that up. I don't think the haircut's that bad, but if you're not familiar with Stephen Dorff, I knew him from the Blade series because I just like vampire movies a lot, but he was also in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think, prequel, Leatherface. He was in SFW, which is like a classic 90s movie, Public Enemies, Cold Creek Manor, Space Truckers, and lest we forget King B, he was in Aerosmith's Crying video. He was the dude in the Crying video.
I'll tell you, a Google image search will yield many bad haircuts. This is not his first.
You got Dorfed.
You remember Dorf on Golf?
I do. That was like they had like the late night commercials for Dorf on Golf. It was like a video series, right?
It was a VHS video series. You could get Dorf on Golf. Dorf goes fishing. Dorf runs for political office. I'm not sure. There was a lot of Dorfs, and I think it was like a PBS comedian, and his whole shtick was that he was just on his knees and he was a little person.
Yeah, that's, as Roger Roper would say, that would never fly today. Kind of an interesting thing with these character names too. I know that we pointed out for season 2 that some of the character names just felt really lazy. In season 3, you get that again, and I think even in season 1 with the Rust Cohle and the Marty Hart, like you had the names are very, very almost literal in what they're trying to describe. If you Google Roland West, I believe a bunch of Adam West like pictures come up as Batman.
That's pretty interesting, man. I'd be really interested in learning more about the writing process and seeing what Pizzolatto is sneaking and pushing in here. There's a few things that I think are pretty obvious that we'll talk about later, but I'm kind of interested in the more obscure.
Now we get to your MVP of the season, I believe, King B, Scoot McNairy.
Big fan.
So Scoot McNairy plays the missing kid's father. Spoiler alert, there are missing kids in this series. If you don't know that already, you missed out on the
Double
trailer.
spoiler, they have a father.
Yeah. And he is actually being widely praised for being the standout performance in True Detective Season 3. Several critics have said, look, they expected that moody Mahershala Ali character. He is very stoic. They know what to get from him. Stephen Dorff has a long film track record. They know about him too. But Scoot McNairy, they expected him to do what he normally does in movies and TV, but he goes above and beyond in this. And you've kind of mentioned before, King B, that this guy is not an unknown. He has a long list of really impressive film roles, including Monsters, Argo, Killing Them Softly, 12 Years a Slave, Frank, Gone Girl, and Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And if you're a Netflix fan, he was in the Western miniseries Godless.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Scoot. That movie Monsters that he did is a really cool monster movie that flew under the radar years ago. It's very much Close Encounters of the Third Kind meets Lost in Translation. King B definitely recommends you go and you check it out. He's also on an AMC show, or was on an AMC show called Halt and Catch Fire, which was terrible. I mean, terrible. It's the story of the punk rock origins of the PC computer in the 80s. Go fuck yourself. Anyway, Halt and Catch Fire is what that show should have done after the first season. Cannot hate on that show enough. It was terrible. Scoot plays the analog to, I guess, a Bill Gates character who is partnered with a Steve Jobs character who, like, his big reveal is he's secretly a gay.
There was a period of time, though, when Hollywood and TV production in particular were very convinced that we were very, very interested in the stories of, like, Silicon Valley and how computer stuff was made with the Social Network and all that stuff. And I can't think of a less interesting topic. There was that Steve Jobs biopic, too, and I was just like, who cares? I mean, I like computers, but what the hell?
They never should have gave those nerds money. I swear. It's insufferable. The people that think these stories are interesting. It boggles my mind.
In the first two seasons, we didn't really get much victim perspective on either True Detective season. So, for instance, in season 1, you're following from the detective's viewpoint. And yeah, they interview some people and they touch base with a few people. Their lives are impacted. You get a great performance from Louis Hertham. You get...
the girl that was naked and Banshee all the time?
Yes, that one.
Oh my God.
So anyway, you get them, but they're kind of like just ancillary characters. And it seems in this case, you've got Scoot McNairy playing the father, who seems to it's incorporating a little bit more of the victim, or at least a relative of the victim. I think they're exploring a new dimension there in the show, which I really welcome.
Yeah, there are scenes where he kind of puts a little bit of pressure on the detectives. It's really interesting performance. Scoot is who he is in most all of his roles, which isn't to say that he can't act, but I think he takes what he does and really makes it three-dimensional in this. As, you know, the victim of this crime, a father caring about his lost children, he kind of puts pressure in a very human way upon the detectives, who keep this very unpersonal and they are unaffected by it. It's simply part of their job, but there are times where he interacts with them where he's really impressing upon them the stress and the emotional strain that it is putting him under. And I think he's looking to kind of share that load with them. And I think it really creates an interesting dynamic amongst all these characters that ultimately are all kind of cold for their own reasons.
So we've got the father, played by Scoot McNairy. The kid's mom is played by Mamie Gummer. And she is a little less known, but not a complete newcomer to Hollywood.
She's got a strong career. She's a handful of credits. She is actually Meryl Streep's daughter. In the show, she doesn't have the hugest part. She's really more scenery for Scoot's performances more than anything else. Kind of fleshes out the world that he is living in and he is coming from. I think it adds a little bit more emotional weight to the story. You know, if a father losing his children needed more emotional weight, she's going to kind of help paint a picture. I'm not going to give away the hows and the whys, but it's definitely worth checking out.
You know, in season 2, we had Jordan, who was Frank's love interest. So Frank is played by Vince Vaughn. His wife and non-baby mama was Jordan, who Carrie Gross and we were thoroughly annoyed by this woman's performance. We have a new love interest in season 3, and she's played by Carmen, and she plays Amelia, who is a school teacher who kind of becomes embroiled with the case. It seems like she's got a lot more screen presence, and it just is more enjoyable as a love interest, which, again, if you want to mix love into True Detective, you better have a likable character in the mix.
You know, one of my favorite parts about the episodes I saw was watching the chemistry begin between Carmen and Mahershala's characters. She's not flashy. She's not very outspoken. She's just a school teacher in a small town. And Mahershala Ali's character, he just notices her. And it's a way that he looks at her, a way that they kind of talk. There's this sort of pregnant pause to everything that they have to say. It seems so genuine, and there's a lot of chemistry. And she's just got these beautiful, beautiful big brown eyes. Carmen, if you're listening, my schedule is way open.
Now, if you've never heard of Carmen, she played Martin Luther King's wife in Selma. She was in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the Harry Potter prequel.
I'm right here.
And also Alien Covenant. I recognized her from Alien Covenant and from Fantastic Beasts, but I didn't realize that she actually has a long Hollywood career. And I don't know if you saw the Eddie Murphy movie Metro back in 1997. I did as a teenager.
She's also a Disney host from when she was a kid.
Like from the Disney Channel?
Yeah, she was a Disney Channel host.
This should certainly be a darker character.
Married to Jeffrey Wright until 1994. Hey, Carmen.
So one of the twists in this season, which really kind of grips on the zeitgeist of what we're seeing on TV and in podcasts a lot, is this idea of this documentary that's being made as the show is rolling. And this is kind of in the present day, I guess, of the show. In it, we have this character who is a crime documentary director, and is played by Sarah Gadon, and she represents sort of the millennial generation. So if you are familiar with Sarah Gadon, she was in a lot of David Cronenberg films. So she was in A Dangerous Method in 2011 and Cosmopolis in 2012. She also starred in several TV series, including Are You Afraid of the Dark, In a Heartbeat, Mutant X, and Dark Oracle, and has been starred as a voice actress in several productions. So this character is one of the few complaints that I've heard from critics after watching early portions of this season of True Detective, is that they feel like this is a very distracting millennial caricature. Was she on screen at all in the scenes that you saw?
From what I saw, she's not even really a feature worth discussing, let alone complaining about. Yeah, she's a character and she shows up, but she's really just part of the setting for the most current timeline in this series. She is the director and interviewer of a Netflix true crime style documentary. And she's just there to ask a few questions to get Mahershala Ali's character to begin recalling these events, which is how the story is detailed to you through his recollections. Beyond that, like, what she does isn't that important. So I think it's kind of absurd to critique or complain about her performance. It's just she's a plot device.
So going from a fictional director to the actual director, the director who did the first 2 episodes of True Detective season 3 is Jeremy Saulnier, and he did Blue Ruin in 2013, which has been called one of the pulpiest and bleakest, funniest crime films of the decade. So he did the first 2 episodes of the season. He left, and they said due to scheduling conflicts, but it was really kind of an abrupt departure. And so then they brought in Daniel Sackheim to kind of finish out the season. So he did FX's The Americans, and then he kind of split those duties for the remaining episodes with Pizzolatto, the show's creator, who stepped into the director's chair for the first time this season. That kind of worries me in the sense that Pizzolatto had a lot more creative control of season 2, and we saw what a disaster that was.
You know, if anything is going to give me pause for concern with this whole season, I'm going to call it now. It's the idea of the singular creative vision that Pizzolatto seems to really be fighting for. That was the big issue with season 2. You can't have one guy doing everything because there's no editorial sense of restraint. The guy's just going to throw everything on paper and then throw everything on film. The entirety of anybody's thought process isn't all good. You need someone to kind of rein you in. I think the director did a great job in season 1 of doing that. In season 2, that just wasn't there. It seems to me that Pizzolatto is kind of difficult to work with, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was some drama that made these guys decide to part ways. I'm not familiar with Sackheim, but The Americans is a show a lot of people were talking about this year. Then again, a lot of people also talked about Bird Box, and that film can best be described with a very bad word to use for negative things.
Yeah, I want to take a second to say fuck Bird Box and fuck Bandersnatch as well. I got back from the holidays, and the first thing everybody asked me when I got back to work wasn't like, how was your New Year's? Which is also a question I don't really care to answer. Or how was your Christmas? I'm more interested in working at work. They came up with, hey man, did you see Bird Box? I'm like, no, I have no desire to see that. I saw A Quiet Place, and I imagined that it was much better. And then the other thing was, did you see Bandersnatch, or did you play it? And I was like, what is that, the Black Mirror thing? I was like, I don't like Black Mirror. What? I've said it before on the podcast, guys. I only watch TV and movies to do the podcast. I'm not actually a big fan of TV or movies. I watch soccer on TV, and that's about it.
Are you familiar with the premise of Bird Box?
Yeah. Don't look at stuff, you die.
Yeah, if you look at the thing, you die. I like that you brought up A Quiet Place. You make noise, you die. In this one, if you look at things, you die. I'm going to make a Netflix horror film called I Can't Feel My Toe.
Or the Carrie Gross Netflix special, Don't Touch.
Don't touch.
So one thing to be excited about, though, is David Milch, who wrote Deadwood and worked on NYPD Blue. He is involved in this one. And so he co-wrote episode 4 of season 3. And if you haven't heard our recap of seasons 1 and 2, the thing you should know, the pattern with True Detective, is episode 4 historically has been like the action climax. So I'm super excited about that. And what's really interesting is Salado worked with Milch on the Deadwood movie. So these guys have actually worked together on Deadwood. That gives me a lot of hope for the quality of the writing.
Well, I know Gene really is a big fan of the action climax.
Gene Action Climax Lions.
Action Climax Lion. And I'm your host, King Can't Get Off the Couch B. Let's see here. Yeah, episode 4 is a big hook in both seasons for all the watchers. That great single cut shot in season 1 and the tactical thrill ride of season 2. I'm going to be watching very closely and looking forward to that episode. You mentioned Milch wrote Deadwood. My opinion, one of the greatest works of character dialogue ever. It's a Downton Abbey set in the Wild West and probably a personal Bible for me in television form. Then again, he also made John from Cincinnati, which can best be described with a very not good word to use for negative things. So I guess we're going to see what we're going to see.
Which one was John from Cincinnati?
Oh my God. So we got excited about John from Cincinnati because it was the first time we were going to see Ed O'Neill in something in a very long time. And in the trailer, he seems like really intense, like something's happening. And then it's just Rebecca De Mornay playing a burnt out surfer mom who just decided to show up every day and think, how can I annoy viewers the most today? There's a surfer who is really into drugs. There's a girl with a boy's haircut. And there's a mysterious figure who appears on the beach. His name is John from Cincinnati. That's the most sense anyone is going to make of that show ever. Go ahead and just consider yourself fully versed on John from Cincinnati. Skip it.
So a slight tangent here. Ed O'Neill, actually, people know him for his work on Married with Children, but prior to doing that, he was never even considered for a comedic role. He is a dramatic actor and very, very good at that. And so when he did Married with Children, people were like, what, Ed O'Neill in a comedy? And he fucking ruled that. I mean, Al Bundy is one of the greatest TV characters of all time. Still makes me laugh to this day.
I don't know if you recall, but in 2009, that show Modern Family came out to a large amount of acclaim, and he was one of the main actors in that. He's also shows up in my mom's favorite movie, Dutch, which I can't believe you guys haven't covered on the movies pod.
I love Dutch. Dutch and Uncle Buck were two of my favorite movies growing up, and it's probably because I didn't have a father.
Can you imagine if you were raised by Dutch and Uncle Buck? You'd be the toughest dude ever.
The only Dutch I care for is Dutch Vanderlyn.
I have a plan.
All right, so transitioning from the cast and crew to the production of the show itself, this is going to be a lot like season 1 in having multiple time frames. So in season 2, we had a straight chronological story. Here, we're going to see Wayne Hayes, Mahershala Ali in 3 distinct time periods. So it starts out with him in 1980 when the crimes actually happened.
Yeah, that's right.
Do they do the, like, look, it's really the 80s thing, or is it pretty, like, low-key?
You know, what's funny to me is that due to the location and I think just economically where that place was at the time. The difference between 80 and I believe when they come back in 1990 is subtle. He's got a slightly different haircut, more modern clothing, but you don't see any hoverboard, skateboards. There's no neon Nikes on display. It's pretty mellow and subtle, and I'm not going to give it away, but I think that the way that they transition between these time periods can be pretty clever and sort of surreal, and that's where you get the most, I want to say, supernatural vibe.
Yeah, season 1 of True Detective kind of did the same thing. I really appreciated the fact that really the only key you get into the time shift is when Marty has his first cell phone, and he's like trying to figure it out, and then you realize, oh, in the first part they had pagers. And so it's like, okay, you get like a slight difference, but the cars don't really change that much. The clothing doesn't really change that much. The surroundings don't change that much. And that's pretty accurate for rural America. I mean, I lived in rural Ohio for 5 years, and I tell you, it was still stuck in, a decade earlier. So from there we go to the 1990s where Wayne is reflecting back on the case. What's going on there in 1990?
So in 1990, he's called in to be interviewed, I believe, by the current prosecutor, and they're wanting to review the case and the arrest that took place in 1980. And Mahershala Ali's character begins to suppose that they're looking to overturn the conviction. There's going to be a big parallel between the first episode of this season and the first episode of season 1, as far as like the reveal. I guess my big clue to that would be Rust Cohle going, "How indeed, detective?" And you're going to have one of those moments. But in 1990, you're going to see the character begin to review his recollections in 1980. Did he take the right steps, and do they have their man? And if not, what are they going to do next?
Kind of framing that in the same way that season 1. So are you saying that there are fans of those Rust Cohle interview scenes where he's just alone in the room with the detectives? Is there more of that?
It's not the same sort of chemistry where he's allowed to just sort of ruminate on his cosmic perspectives on things. This is a lot more business.
Got it. And then in 2015, it's the final timeline. So this is the most current timeline. He's being interviewed about that case. This is the documentary crew.
That's right. He's going to be sitting down with this documentary, and they're asking him to recall aspects of the case. Now, they're not calling specifically to ask him. The topic of the documentary is actually a book that was written by his wife, and they're asking his recollections of his wife's book and his work that went into the book.
Another parallel that people have called out between season 1 and season 3 is this concept of a serial killer who's a litter bug as well, just leaving artifacts behind, because you can't be a good Southern serial killer without leaving things out in the open. So season 1, we had the bundles of twigs. In season 3, it's spooky dolls.
Yeah, I guess every killer wants to be caught. When Mahershala Ali goes out to sort of track and find these missing children, he is kind of lurking through this wooded area. And one of the first clues or suggestions that speaks to him that says he's kind of on the track is he finds this old-timey corn husk doll. It's a very rough-hewn little doll made out of corn husks and adorned with, I think, ribbon and baby's breath flowers. And it looks like a little bride. And he finds one or two of these along a sort of very obscured path before he makes a discovery in the show. And I think that, this litter, as you said, we're sort of a parallel to those bundled, tied up sticks, the cat traps they found hanging from trees in season 1.
So as these little corn husk dolls are strewn about, it brings us to the setting. I was a big fan of the season 1 setting in Louisiana. Season 2, I felt much like the sprawl of the characters and the sprawl of the plot. The sprawl of the setting being in Los Angeles didn't really work for me. It was not just Los Angeles as a city. It was like a whole fucking county. Too big, too urban. There's gratuitous shots of the city. And it just didn't really feel that True Detective. And maybe I just got it stuck in my head that this is a spooky, rural kind of show. But for that, that just works for me.
Finally, it's a show using the word Ozarks a lot that I actually want to watch. I didn't really put together the Ozarks until I started reading a little bit on the internet. That word just seemed to start popping out a lot in reference to the show. To me, it's just a Midwest kind of cold, dreary October, economically depressed place. I like a story that isn't too specific in its setting or location. This could occur anywhere. It could occur at any time. I think that timeless aspect is really important to making a show ultimately relatable over the years and make sure that it ages well. So as far as the setting, I don't really think it matters. It just so happens that a place with a bunch of bony, dried out trees and miserable, cold, wet sludge on the side of the roads adds a lot to the sort of theme and the color of this show.
I think I just have some sort of a weird, like, Appalachian, Ozark sort of fetish, because also there was the Jennifer Lawrence movie, Winter's Bone. I don't know if you saw that. It's good, and in that, it's kind of the same thing. There's just this like poverty-stricken, like rural people just living out like horribly depressing lives, and I don't find it like in a sadistic sense enjoyable. It's just kind of like I find it like a fascinating world that this is something that exists in the United States right now, but it seems like such a far off place.
Well, I mean, we are located in the paved concrete deserts of Arizona. So yes, the notion of trees, regardless of their foliage, does seem very exotic. That is true.
It was great in doing research for this podcast. I started looking up, places where this was shot. And one of the funniest things is the internet is just loaded with articles from the local newspapers out in Arkansas being so excited that this new television show called The True Detective is being shot, in their town. So it was pretty cool. I, for one, I never thought I'd say this, am excited to spend the next 10 weeks in Arkansas.
I'm just happy to get away from the cowboy video game.
All right. With that, we will eagerly await the beginning of True Detective Season 3 on January 13th. So that is a Sunday. It'll air at 9 p.m. Eastern on HBO. So if you've got streaming services, you should be able to catch it as early as 6 if you live on the West Coast there. That concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV True Detective. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. On Facebook, you can just search for Shat on TV Podcast. The website is shatontv.com. You can email us, hosts@shatontv.com. Get in early while you can if you've got any thoughts on the show, if you're excited about it, if you've got your misgivings, if you've already got theories.
Or if you want to Venmo King Bee Workshop $5, I'll give you all the spoilers you want.
Anyway, that's hosts@shatontv.com, or you can always hit us up on Twitter. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a review. That helps the podcast go. We do have several other podcasts. We do Game of Thrones, we do Westworld, we do American Gods, we do Taboo, and of course we have Shat the Movies. And all of those are doing really well. But this is our newest podcast. It has no history behind it. And the best thing that you can do to help us grow this podcast, if you enjoy listening to it, is go leave a review. You can go to shatontv.com/review, and it'll take you right to the correct review page. And also share with a friend. We'd really, really appreciate it. On behalf of my co-host, King B.
Get out of here, you jerks.
Big D, Carrie Gross, and Roger Roper, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the Episode 1 deep dive of True Detective Season 3. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in Arkansas.